14 books in the month of, maybe 15 books, not sure all of them are here. I read this big, beefy stack of books in the month of May, and we are going to talk about them briefly before they collapse under, or I collapse under the weight of this massive stack. So let's just get into it. Watermoon. I know this novel is really popular. I liked it. I read it with one of my book clubs. I think we all had similar critiques. I ended up giving it a 3.5. There were aspects of this novel that I really wanted to love. Like, I love the lyrical writing. I love the magical realism. I love the world that was built here. But a lot of the plot felt like a series of fetch quests as we just run through all of the really cool concepts introduced in this world. And it was really hard to connect with our main character. She was kind of unlikable in a lot of ways, and the way she took her counterpart kind of just for a ride, the love interest, she just completely took him for a ride. And she wasn't a very good person, and it was really hard to root for her with the reveals at the end, especially considered. So I had a hard time liking Watermoon, or I had an easy time liking it, a hard time loving it. However, it is a really nice novel. It had a lot of great concepts that I really just wish were explored more in another setting, in another novel. All right, here's my worst book of the month. The Last Thing He Told Me. We read this with my other book club. I gave it a 1.75. I hated this book. Most of my book club hated this book. I cannot believe this got adapted into an Apple TV 9-episode TV show. I don't understand. I do not understand. This novel has virtually no substance. The only things I liked about it is the fact that I learned about houseboats. The thing was the most interesting part of this novel. Essentially, we have a husband dipping out on his wife after only a year while she's the stepmom to this really unlikable teenager. And because that teenager was so unlikable and the entire focus of the novel is doing things right by this teenager, I couldn't root for anything that was happening. And the novel's ending, brother, it was disappointing. I don't want to really go into this novel at all. It was horrible. And I think I'm going to keep this book simply because it's going to compete in the top 10 worst books I've ever read. We're going to feature Ashes of the Sun and Blood of the Chosen together. This is my Avatar: The Last Airbender inspired magical system that I'm really pushing for people to pick up. It is part of a trilogy called Burning Blade and Silver Eye. I'm currently reading the third novel, but I'm waiting on my physical copy because I had trouble finding a physical. So I absolutely adore this series. I'm giving all of them 5s depending on how the series concludes, but these two are strong 5s. It focuses on 2 primary POVs of an estranged brother and sister who were separated at ages 5 and 8. One of them is fighting on the side of the mercenaries and the revolution, and the other is essentially part of the Twilight Order, which are a group of magical beings who are waiting for the Chosen to return, who are like the gods of this universe, and they use Avatar: The Last Airbender style elemental magic, coupled with a little bit of like time warpy magic. It's really interesting. I really enjoyed both of these. I absolutely devoured them. The vast majority of the time I will break series down so I don't read them back to back to back. Not with this series. I'm going to finish the entire series in about 3 weeks, about a book a week. I'm absolutely obsessed. Django Wexler has moved up in my all-time favorite authors. I've only read one other of his books prior to this, and I will not shut up. I will be a forever yapper and a forever stan with how much I enjoy his writing, and I will start working through his quite large bibliography and backlog that I need to get to. I did not like Jim Butcher's Stormfront. That just wasn't for me, but this is his son, James Butcher, and I like this. This is a much more contemporary urban fantasy novel with a really nice magic system, and honestly, I like the kind of grumpy mentor, super enthusiastic, plucky sidekick main character dynamic that we have here, and I'm excited to see where this goes. I feel like book 1 unfortunately had to set up so much, but there are already 3 books in this series, and book 2 and 3 are part of my June 30 books in 30 days, so I will be reporting back overall how I feel about this series. This was not my favorite. Rachel Gillig I know everybody loves Rachel Gillig. She's popular for a reason. I think this book is written for the girlies. I think this book is absolutely... I did like the focus on what was essentially a secondary character in the first novel, and she became the main character of this novel. But I really hated that Elspeth just became so background. And I also hated that this large cast of characters was really hard to keep track of with these dynastic families. And then you have all the supporting characters surrounding each dynastic family. And you could tell that a lot of these characters were only brought into the overarching narrative so they could be cannon fodder for the fetch quests that they had to go on. So I just had a hard time loving it. I don't think I'm going to check out Rachel's next or newest book. It's just, she's not an author really for me, but I can fully understand why she's popular. So I'm also doing a buddy read with my good friend Books Coffee Comics. We are working through the Powder Mage trilogy. This is book 2, The Crimson Campaign. These are beefy. These are beefy fantasy books about basically what happens after you've already thrown over the monarchy and you're picking up the crumbling remnants of an empire and trying to force it back together in something that's more cohesive and for the people. And there's a lot of interesting concepts here, but there are just quite a few POVs because you have the elites who are trying to put everything back together. You have an elite in exile. You have basically a chambermaid who might be something more. You have the long lost son of the last king. There's so much going on. Then you have gods fighting in the background. It's got the coolest magic system though, because basically powder mages are able to control black powder or gunpowder, and they're fighting up against elemental magicians essentially. And there's just a lot going on here. And I do like the series overall. However, without reading book 3, it's really hard to judge the totality of the series. So I'm just not sure where this is going to land for me yet, but overall, I do have positive feelings towards it. I really wanted to love Unhallowed Halls, and the reason for that is I'm a sucker for dark academia, especially dark academia that actually takes the time to give us some academia, not just dark. However, I found a lot of the characters to be kind of insufferable, and I just really had a hard time connecting to the length of this novel. I think if she would have cut this novel down by maybe 50 to 100 pages, I think this would have felt more tightly woven. While I did like the fact that we actually had some academia to our dark academia, I just fundamentally felt bored during a lot of this novel, and whenever a novel feels boring, it's really hard to pick it up. But I did like the concepts presented here. I think if she just would have had maybe some more editing time, or time with editing, and some beta readers who maybe told her like, hey, the length of this is the kind of the issue, I think this could have been something great. But unfortunately, it's just an okay novel for me, but I do appreciate the publisher for sending me a copy. The GOAT. The absolute GOAT that is John Scalzi. I don't rate anything that he has ever written below a 4, and this one was a 4 for me. I really enjoyed it. It's the 3rd book in the Old Man's War series. I felt like the galactic interplay that was happening as John continues to just kind of outmaneuver these like senior chiefs. The way he has so much plot armor and yet not enough plot armor is just such a fun dynamic play for his character and the world that has been built here. I'm interested to see in July, I'll be reading Zoe's Tale, which is book 4, and Tor has already offered to send me the remaining publications of the new covers along with the newest book, and I am so excited. Honestly, John Scalzi is one of my favorite contemporary authors who is currently writing, and he does a great job of humorous sci-fi. So if you want something that's humorous sci-fi, I definitely think you should check out book 1, The Old Man's War, that starts off this 6 to 7 book series now, and then like his entire catalog is great if you want entry-level sci-fi, but with a humorous twist. And I also think these are books that are best experienced with the audible narration because Will Wheaton puts his entire soul into making these as comical as possible to the point where I can't separate his voice from Scalzi's work, which I think is kind of like with Dungeon Crawler Carl. You have, I think his name is Jay Hayes or John Hayes, is so integral to the popularity of that series. I truly believe that. So I am not a memoir person, but I had watched the Hulu 3-part documentary series about the Passengers of A YouTube page and the downfall of what happened. And getting the perspective from Shari Frankie was so critical to my overall encapsulation and understanding of the chain of events. This was so powerfully written and so frustrating. I could not imagine the frustration she was going through and how conflicted she felt being the oldest daughter and feeling a sense of totality and responsibility for this situation. It was so well written that you felt in the moment frustrated for what she was going through, and connected to the story in its totality. I don't have words for how well this was done, and I really appreciated the audiobook narration being done by her. I think that added to how powerful it felt. And thank you to the publisher for sending me my physical copy. I believe this came from Gallery Books. You Are Fatally Invited. Everybody has seen this book on their pages throughout the last few months, and I can see why. It was a really fun, self-contained locker room mystery stuck on an island. It was good. I had a lot of fun with it. I do feel like the larger cast of characters and how long it took them to whittle down just made it confusing. You know, it basically is one of those stories where as you POV jump to each character, each of those characters is the one that'll be passing pretty consistently throughout the novel. So the cold open is really hard to understand what's going on. Next, we have the absolute GOAT of a novel, that is The Butcher's Masquerade by Matt Dinniman. While I didn't love The Gate of the Feral Gods, this felt like a 100% return to form and consistent escalation of everything that's been going on in the Dungeon Crawler Carl universe. And the way I cannot shut up about these books is absolutely unhinged. The way I have got my boss to read these, the way I've got multiple friends to read these, the way I am struggling to get my partner to read these because they are so fun. And I am so interested to see on where this is going with the Eye of the Bedlam Bride now that we're finally going to be at Faction Wars. But I am putting off the Eye of the Bedlam Bride until July, simply because I'm trying to savor this series. You know, once I catch up to the Inevitable Ruin that's being published this, I believe, fall or winter, like, I have to join the queue, just like everybody else, waiting for his next book. And so I don't want to do that. I just don't want to catch up too quick, so I'm kind of savoring these novels. I'm giving this a 5 out of 5. I love the Dungeon Crawler Carl universe. I love Princess Donut. I thought her class selection for this floor was so funny. I'm interested to see what her class selection is going to be on the next floor. So, Donut, don't change, Donut. Just don't change. So I got this really pretty edition of The God of the Woods through Book of the Month. It's got sprayed edges. It was, Book of the Year on Book of the Month. I'm not a Lit-Fic person. I did not like this. I only read it because I was so curious about where Barbara's character was going to go, and I wanted to know where Barbara was the whole book. But once I found out where Barbara was and that the cop was just basically going to leave her there, no, that's dumb. Let's not leave a child in the middle of the wilderness. This book wasn't for me. We're just going to move on. I have read everything that S.A. Barnes has put out, and Cold Eternity is probably my second favorite. I think her debut novel, Dead Silence, was my favorite. That was a great novel. It just hit my brain in the right way and made me feel ooky spooky. But this novel was really great. And I feel like it was a great return to form because I think her second novel just wasn't for me. And I think this one was much more effective. I think she does writing on futuristic sci-fi ships. She does that really well, like centering them on a character in an isolated environment on a spooky sci-fi ship. I don't know. I think that's your niche. I'm gonna say it like this. S.A. Barnes, I think that's your niche. And it's a great niche to be in. I love this book. I think focusing on basically AI and integrating human brains into AI, and also this like thought of cryogenics, but all centering that in like the failed venture capitalist mindset of a billionaire. There's so much to unpack because the twist of this novel you can't give it away. It was just so good, but it's also hard to talk about. She explores so many themes in a compact environment, and I really love this novel. And it was really wonderful. So if you're looking for a horror novel set in space, I think this is the one, Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes. And thank you so much to Tor for sending me my copy.